The MySQL Create Wizard allows you to easily create MySQL clusters with your desired configurations. Click the New MySQL Deployment button and it will present you with a list of options for configuring your deployment. For the purposes of this demo, we're going to create a new cluster through our MySQL Dedicated Hosting plan. To summarize, in the Dedicated Hosting plan, all of your machines are hosted by ScaleGrid. We'll provide you with a connection string and you can use it to connect to all of your database clusters. Click Next. Now, enter a name for this cluster. For the purposes of this demo, we're going to deploy our MySQL clusters on Azure. Click the Cloud Profiles dropdown, and under the MySQL Azure section, you should see all the different data centers we support across the world. Let's choose MySQL East US 2. Now, let's select our VM size. By default, the system provides 7 to 8 different sizes. For each size, we automatically apply an instance type, disk size, type of disk, and also your IOPS. All these sizes are configurable at an account basis. Simply file a support ticket with our team, and we can configure these sizes and change the instance type, or disk size as well. Next, you can pick the version of your MySQL server. Currently, we only support the 5.7 version. Next, you can pick your storage engine. The recommended engine is InnoDB. In the next step, you can enable master-slave configuration for your deployments. If you're running a production deployment, we definitely recommend that you enable a master-slave configuration. There are 2 types of supported master-slave configurations. We can do a master and a slave and a quorum, or we can do a master and 2 slaves. If you're running a production system, we would highly recommend a master and 2 slaves. Once you've enabled your master-slave configuration, there are 2 types of synchronization you can use: semi-sync and async, and the default is semi-sync. In semi-synchronous replication, essentially what you're guaranteeing is that once a new client receives a commit, it is guaranteed that this commit has been received by at least one other slave. So in case the master slave dies at this point, you can do a lossless failover. In asynchronous replication, each slave syncs asynchronously to the master, so there is potential that the slave might be behind the master, and at this point, if the master dies, it could lead to some data loss. However, depending on your scenario, it could be okay. Click Next. In the Advanced tab, we provide you 2 options. You can enable SSL, and this enables encryption in transit, and all input connections to the cluster require SSL. The second option we provide is to encrypt data disk. This provides encryption at rest, and once you enable this option, your data is always encrypted at rest on disk. A benefit of enabling encryption at rest is that your backups are always encrypted. This means that your backups can only be recovered on this particular set of machines. In the next step, we enable you to apply firewall rules to control access to your cluster. By default, we don't recommend exposing your MySQL port to the internet. So essentially, you can narrow down to a list of subnets to which you want to open the IP address. We also show you your current IP address, so you can use that to open your MySQL port to that particular IP. And lastly, the system gives you a summary of all your choices. All you have to do is click Create, and our system kicks off a job which will allocate the machines, install MySQL, configure the master-slave replication, and once the job is done, the cluster will be in running state. You can also monitor the progress of our jobs from the Jobs tab. The Jobs tab is kind of like a history view of the system. It shows all the different jobs that have been run on the system, and you can search through the history. For example, you can look for a create job, and this will show all the different steps in this job, as well as the time taken for this job. If you have any further questions, please email us at support@scalegrid.io.